Welcome back to the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast. On today's show, we're very honored to be joined by Deborah Gottesman. Deborah has a unique contextual understanding of lighting from all perspectives. Her career spans over 30 years in all facets of the lighting industry, including design, engineering, management, education, and manufacturing. An electrical engineer with an MBA in real property, Deborah has successfully worked on projects in many sectors with particular expertise in heritage, residential, and commercial projects. She has taught lighting at all levels to a wide audience, from students at colleges and universities to senior architects. Since establishing Gottesman Associates in 1999, Deborah's creative, rigorous, passionate, and client-driven approach has brought award-winning lighting designs to a wide range of satisfied and repeat clients. Her firm is a boutique lighting practice in Toronto with 3 associates who collaborate to bring their clients' vision to light. Deborah currently sits on the Illuminating Engineering Society Residential Lighting Committee and is past president of the Toronto section. She also currently sits on the Canadian National Committee of the Commission Internationale de L'Eclairage. Oh, I tried my French from grade 8 there. Deborah's project portfolio includes the Ontario Association of Architects headquarters building, Union Station, which if you're American is kind of like what's the one in New York called Grand Central? Looks very similar.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful building. John Street Roundhouse in Park, Toronto, Young Shepherd Center, and there's others here. You can see more of her work at Gottesman.ca. That's Gottesman.ca, and her social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube will be posted to the getagriponlighting.com website, so you can check it out there. But Greg, I'm thinking we want to talk about this ETISSL.com, their new website, their new products. What's cooking?
Yeah, well, they have new products as their commercial and residential downlights, and they say downlighting for every scenario, and they mean it. I'm telling you, I'm looking at these right now. They've got canless wafers, canless gimbal, commercial, retrofit gimbal surface disc, or as you Canadians say, pot lights, but here we call them downlights or can lights. They have them all, and they also have them lumen selectable and color selectable. So easy to work with. Every can option out there, go to ETI.
If you want to get fancy smancy, you can say recessed luminaires, but you can go to etissl.com. That's right. And you got to go to NILD.org. If you have light bulbs in a warehouse, that's right. You got a counter, you got people on the order desk, you're taking orders over the phone, you're selling on the website, you're selling on different marketplaces online, then this is your association. Go to NILD.org. We have a convention coming up August 19th through 21st. Be there or be square. Deborah Gottesman, welcome to the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Pleasure to be here.
Yes. No, it's great to have you. And we talked a little bit before, and we've had a few lighting designers on in the past. And, the question comes up over and over is, what is a lighting designer? How do you become it, and what is it? Break it down for us. Let's go.
Okay. I think I have to compare and contrast. What a lot of lighting that we see out there that isn't done by a trained lighting designer tends to be what we call lighting layouts, where the focus is on the drawing and making symmetric patterns and making sure that there is enough light, but so that nobody complains. If a space is bright, typically people are happy. But if you light everything, you notice nothing.
Mm.
And what a lighting designer typically does, we have a different process. And the first thing that we do is think about what it is that we want to light. Then we look at where can we light it from. And the third step is picking the hardware, if you will. So people, even friends and family, sometimes they send me pictures of pretty chandeliers, thinking that that's what we do. And that is such a minute part of what we do. And in fact, when we work with interior designers, they're responsible for the aesthetics. We don't even pick the decorative stuff. We weigh in on the lighted effect and see if we need to augment anything. But our concern is with the mood and atmosphere, with making the space shine, if you will. We put architects and interior designers put so much, time and effort in getting finishes right and colors right. But if you don't light it properly, things can get really skewed. In fact, I have a client now that called us in after the fact where a beautiful interior design of a condominium, but the fixture that was picked for lighting the corridors has skewed everything uh, to a wrong color tone. So instead of seeing taupe, no, really,
Yeah,
instead of
no, for
seeing
sure.
taupe, they're seeing pink.
Mm.
And a really nice design, but what a lighting designer would have done would have been to get working samples. You can't see what my office looks like here. I've done that
Mm.
intentionally, but I've probably got, half a dozen samples here, because when color is important, and it usually is,
Mm.
we like to test it out and make sure that you're going to get good color accuracy, and making sure that only the things that need to be lit are lit. So that's sort of in a nutshell. Um, to get to the point that we can do this, we study visibility, how the eye and the brain work together to process, what we see. We understand color. We understand how light works with color, how we perceive spaces. So, for example, pot lights, down lights, whatever you want to call them, good product, but what do? They aim at the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say in most applications, the floor is not what we want to do. I always, explain to clients that we walk around life in a vertical position, and we look at vertical surfaces. So
Mm-hmm.
our perception of the brightness of a space comes from vertical surfaces. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
only lighting the floor, you actually have to light to a higher light level to get the same perceived
Mm.
brightness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Deborah, do you remember? Do you remember
Mhm.
the in the '90s there was this trend to change K12 acrylic lenses out to small paracube lenses to eliminate the glare on CRT screens. I don't know if you
Yes.
remember that. And the
Oh,
effect of
yes.
this was to cause a boom in seasonal affective disorder because what happened was all the vertical illumination was eliminated in the office. And so all the light
Yeah.
was pushed straight down and the walls were dark. And you can even go to catalogs and see the dark
Mhm.
walls. If you could pull out the old
Yes.
Paracube catalogs and look at them and they show you
Mhm.
pictures with no glare on the
Mhm.
rounded CRT screen, but the all walls in the office are dark. So there definitely is something to
Mhm.
seeing light on a vertical surface that makes you think the space
Yes.
is brighter. Now,
Yes.
how does that impact us though? I have a question here, but I'm gonna see what you comment on that, and then I have a follow up to that.
So I would say not only did the louvers darken the walls, they also darkened the ceiling.
Yes.
So, I would argue that not all K12 lenses were a source of glare, depending on how they are positioned.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, somebody that is just doing a lighting layout would have done a checkerboard pattern on the ceiling, put lights everywhere. Whereas, in many cases, for example, in your office, I don't want the light in front of me where I can see it and where it's shining into my eyes. If it's behind me slightly, it will still light my desk and I have less glare. So we would do a layout that's much more specific to what's happening underneath. So, like when we do a lighting layout, we ask not only for the floor, what we want is the reflected ceiling plan, what's happening in the ceiling, are there
Mm-hmm.
coffers, or is there molding, things like that, is it a peaked roof? But we also like to see the furniture underlaid or potential layouts, because that helps to inform what we should be lighting.
Mm-hmm. The
So, yeah.
circadian versus tunability versus good design. Okay, so people talk about lighting improving health outcomes, and there's some evidence
Mhm.
that it helps people with
Mhm.
early onset dementia sleep and these different kinds of things. But
Mhm.
for the general
Mhm.
population, the average office, can you distinguish between the feelings of a well-designed, well-lit space and the feeling people get from being in a nicely designed space with a good lighting design? and that of, the talk of health effects. Like, where does the beautiful design end and where does the health effects start? And do you know the answer to this question? That's my, because there's people saying, we need this many lumens and this many foot candles to be able to create this circadian response. But what I find is most lighting designers are more nuanced and incorporate dimming and things like this, and also
Mhm.
contrast in light, which is kind of anti-circadian, but also makes people feel good. So my question, I guess, is what's the difference between people feeling good because good lighting design? Isn't that healthy? Isn't that a health effect of lighting? You understand what I'm asking?
Yes, yes. Like it's almost like you're asking, do we really need the circadian
Yes,
lighting if the lighting is designed well? I
exactly.
interpret it that way. Okay. So there are um, there are things that we as human beings can adapt to, and there are things that we can't adapt to. So just as an example, color temperature. I typically don't like very cool white light,
Mm,
but if it has good color accuracy, I will adapt to being under a cooler light source. We all will. If the color is not accurate enough, Tony Esposito might not like that I'm using the word color accuracy, but I think it's the best layperson, to understand. If the color isn't accurate, so if the banana you're eating doesn't look like it's the right color, and the strawberries, don't look like they're the right color, we will never adapt to that.
mm,
So human comfort at leads to well-being.
mm-hmm.
We know this, and we also know that beauty and affects us. Being in beautiful spaces has neurological impacts on us.
Mm-hmm.
So um, so I would say if I had to choose, and again it depends on the project, I would say it's more important to get the lighting design right so that people feel comfortable, that they don't go home with headaches at the end of the day or feel like their space is drab and gloomy. um, that is almost more important than the circadian
Mm-hmm.
triggering, the circadian entrainment, because what we can do as people is go outside for a few
Yes.
minutes and
Yes.
get that blue, that 490 nanometers into our eyes, and at the right time of day, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Early on, and make sure we don't get blue light at night. That can also have an effect. So there's more than one way to get circadian entrainment. Here's an example. One of our commercial projects, the before the renovation, the receptionist was sitting under downlights, and she either had to turn them off or go home with a headache
Mm,
because it was so glary to her.
mm-hmm.
And when we designed the new reception space, we made sure like there was a beam on the ceiling in front of her desk, and we actually put the light fixture behind the beam, so it lit the desk, but she had no visibility to the light
Mm,
fixture. And then
mm.
we lit the cabinetry behind her, and it's like night and day. I
I
mean,
totally,
there's
I totally
sorry to
can
use these
understand
things.
that. Yeah, no, I can totally understand that. One of the things I know it's Greg, it's your turn to ask, but one of the things with exterior lighting that I think is at the absolute core of the problem is and we've kind of illuminated our exterior environments, Deborah, so that they're meant to be viewed from above, not to be walked through or driven through. And I think if you can see the light source on an LED, I think what your experience is partially or almost all glare
Yeah,
and not
it's
illumination.
glare.
It's not
and
illumination, it's
at
glare. Yeah, I agree.
at night it's particularly
Yes.
problematic. I mean, that's a
Yes.
whole other topic, but
Sure.
over lighting at night is a real problem. We need very little light at night to see,
Hmm.
and dark sky it
Sure.
is important as well. But that's part of the problem, is that we're over lighting, and we have, with our exterior lighting, we always recommend dimming.
Mm.
um, and it's funny because some landscape architects that we've worked with, and sometimes they do the exterior lighting design, they don't understand why that's necessary. And so here's why. If you're lighting an office between, say, 300 and 500 lux, okay? In that range, most people will be comfortable. You have a very wide range of variability to get it right.
Mm-hmm.
Outside, depending on where you are, what lighting zone you're in, I mean, if you're in a rural area, you certainly need very, very little light. Most of us can see under moonlight.
Mm-hmm.
So
The glare.
dimming
I
is
what
really
my
is
point though on your point,
okay.
if you can see the light source, if you can see
Mhm.
the source of light, I would believe that receptionist is not lying about the headaches. Like I think that
Oh no,
if she's
absolutely
sitting there
not.
all day and there's the pressure from the LED diodes is hitting her eyes all day long, I would say for sure that she's suffering
No,
from something. I would not say that that's
for
fake.
sure.
Yep. I don't know what
Okay.
it is
Just to
exactly or how
round
to
out
describe it. Yeah. Go
just
ahead.
to round out my
So
thought, just on the exterior. So say you're trying to light to 10 lux, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Which isn't very much light. Going to 20 lux or 30 lux makes a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
So there's, real subtleties in the light level to get it right. So dimming is really important outside. Um,
I wrecked your train of
yeah,
thought. It's my fault.
no,
I
that's okay.
yeah,
interrupted you.
sorry,
It's all my
sorry,
fault.
sorry,
Greggy, you
I want
go.
to go back a little,
sorry.
yeah, to the steps you mentioned at the beginning that you go through as a lighting
Mhm,
designer.
mhm,
And one step you didn't say that I always think about. I'm not a lighting designer, but and Mike too. We're selling lighting to end users, and they're always thinking about is when they burn out and what happens to the maintenance aspect of it. So you mentioned, we look where we can light it from. When you do that, do you consider that they can then go back and replace it in the same location, or do you say, "Ah, that looks cool over there. I think that's the right spot to do it," and I don't think about the future. I know you don't, but sometimes we feel that as lighting distributors. That somebody
Yeah,
did that
no.
somewhere along the
So,
line.
okay. So, we say we can do a really good lighting design. We say we can design to good, better, best. Okay, depends on the budget of projects, and you always have to be sensitive to that. And that's part of the rigor that we apply to our projects. Is we manage, budget all the way through, so that when tender comes, nobody's surprised.
Mm.
Um, so the Ontario Association of Architects headquarters is a great example of that. They have a 30-foot atrium, and it was lit with recessed downlights that were metal halide because of the era when it was built in the late 80s, early 90s, which was a good solution at the time. But what's happened is they have a very small elevator. They can't accommodate a lift to get it in to the building.
Hmm.
So they have to erect scaffolding, which is very expensive, very time
Mm-hmm.
consuming. And so by the time it came for us to look at the renovation, most of that lighting in the atrium was burned out. So the first step we took was trying to show where can we light it from that we can still access it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll share an image with you of what it looks like. And that also brings me to integrated lighting. So people think, we pick fixtures and we want to show off our lighting. Well, if you go to our website and look at our projects, there are many projects where we could play, where's Waldo? Where's the light fixture? So it's to us, lighting is not about the product. It's about the space and the environment that we create for the occupants. So we ended up, on the upper floor, we had these meeting rooms that there was some space near the ceiling and they were accessible so that we could do indirect lighting of the ceiling, which helps create the volume of the space. We went to just the halfway up the atrium that could be accessed by a ladder to put some light on the task. So we were very, very mindful of future maintenance. We don't just want the pretty pictures at the beginning of a project. We want clients to come back to us. And this is a referral business. You've got to be mindful. We keep what's best for the client is the first question we ask on every step of the process. What's best for the client? What is going to be easiest for them? And I think I see our job as educating rather than saying this is what you have to do. We find out, well, this is a corridor and we're going to have, special artwork in this corridor. Well, you can light a corridor by lighting the wall so that as you walk through the
Mm-hmm.
corridor, your focal point is on the art.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's a beautiful experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, how about on,
So,
a lot of the everyday applications that at least we as lighting distributors run into as an office or a classroom or, a warehouse? Do we have designers ever on any of these projects? Should they have the end
you're
users?
asking if do they?
I'm asking.
Um,
Should they?
yeah, we
Not do they?
should
They
they
usually don't.
should they?
Yeah.
Well, it's unfortunate that on most projects, and this is true in Canada and the US, um,
Mhm.
they're not using lighting designers, and they should be. The OAA project I was just talking about is a great example. We did a daylight study and found that we didn't need to provide the 300 lux on the desk or whatever it was throughout the day, because even on the cloudiest day we were getting half that amount from natural daylight. Well, lighting the offices to half of what we thought saved the client $30,000 in product.
Hmm.
That is
Oh,
several times what the daylight study cost.
Mm-hmm.
So that's number one. Number two, when I said we could design to good, better, best, if you do a proper layout, in the future, if you ever need to change product, at least the fixtures are in the right place.
Mm-hmm.
So doing a proper lighting design layout is critical to getting it right. So, when we talk about sustainability, most people think, oh, energy, keep the energy down. Well, we're all using LEDs. There really isn't any other effective light source out there that you can access. In my days when I worked with Sylvania, we had a catalog with 2,300 lamps.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I mean, that just doesn't exist anymore. Everything is LED. So I keep losing my train of thought.
That's okay. The energy era is
no.
over. The energy
Sorry,
efficiency era of
that's
lighting
it.
is over. Yes. Now we need to
Okay,
incorporate
so
this into better designs. That's where you were going, I think.
yes, thank you. Yes, so um, sustainability is not just about energy. It's about how many fixtures do you have to manufacture?
Mm-hmm.
How long are they going to last? Right? So if
Mm-hmm.
you get good product in that is going to have good longevity and good layouts that will stand the test of time, that's already a more sustainable project.
Life cycle
So
and life cycle is probably for sustainability. And sustainability is kind of one of those words that we're not sure what it means because it used to mean CFLs, and now it means it changes. It kind of morphs. It's something we're pursuing, but we never get there. I think the idea of considering the life cycle of the light fixture rather than the hours of operation of the light source is kind of probably a better metric to look at. Like how many years is this fixture's life cycle? With a 2x4 troffer, that could be 40 or 50 years. With an LED flat panel, it's maybe 5 to 10 years, something like that, is the life cycle of the product until it has to be replaced. This is not something that the lighting industry takes into consideration in their sustainability talk that often. You're starting to see it, Deborah. But it's not
what happens
totally
also
established. Yeah.
now what happens if you do use the flat panels, which I find terribly glary for the most
Mm-hmm.
part? There are some that are better, but we typically do not touch them in any space that they're going to be visible to the human eye, maybe in a closet or something. But uh, um, oh, um,
Flat
Not
panels,
not
gross.
using flat panels are gross.
not using flat panels.
They
Um,
are.
But you,
Jesus.
you
Uh,
enduring designs and
Sorry,
sustainability and
but
repairability.
so okay. sorry, I hope you can edit that stuff out. Okay, so with when you put in product in the wrong place and use the wrong product that people are uncomfortable with, we have all seen, you know, offices where people have masked off light fixtures,
Sure.
Mhm.
or we used to see them a lot with occupancy sensors where
Hmm.
they weren't set properly, things like that. So if you don't get it right the first time, is that sustainable? Because ultimately, if you don't light a desk properly, people are going to augment the lighting,
Hmm.
right? They'll bring in other sources. So that's not really a sustainable approach. So, in answer to your question, do I think lighting designers belong on projects? Yes, on most projects, I would say so. If you're doing a warehouse and you have the proper warehouse, optics where
Hmm.
lights the verticals, you probably don't need a lighting designer for that. But in a school, for sure, where kids are spending hours of the day, and teachers, I
Here,
think we
here,
belong on all projects.
here's where I think the difference between the average distributor like Greg Eric or Michael Colligan and Deborah Gottesman is that primarily, and correct me if I'm wrong here, a designer will charge for the information and a specifier will make money on the product sale. But a designer charges for the design in and of itself.
Yes. Yep.
And a specifier will specify that, and then when the fixture sale comes, he gets a piece of the cut or whatever. Distributors, like I do a lot of lighting design, and I put that in quotations for those listening because I'm not a lighting designer, and I'm very clear with people that I'm not. But I don't charge for my information, and I would say the vast majority of lighting projects are done in the way Greg and I do them. And that someone comes in who's a distributor, who's a professional, and says, yeah, you can swap that out to LED, you can change it to this. And then that is done to varying degrees of quality in the distribution channel. And I think in the design channel, if I can't remember the fellow we talked to a couple months ago, Greg, but he was talking about how important it is that the clients make the decision to pay for the information that they need to know
Hmm.
about their products. Otherwise, they find themselves into these specifier traps. And I'm not trying to pick on the specifier, but if you go to someone that specifies a certain line of fixtures, guess what? You're going to get that line of fixtures rather than a thought process that's thinking about your needs. Do you have difficulty with this? Because I can never charge for information. Greg, do you ever charge for information? Never, right?
I've done an audit before where I've counted it all and done,
One time
paid
in
it all.
20 years.
Yeah.
Look, sometimes budget dictates these things. Okay, if you have a very low budget and can't afford to, in your budget to repair ceilings, to move things around, a one-for-one replacement, at least pick products that are, not a flat panel, but a regress lens in a downlight, something that will be more comfortable. We certainly, I mean, it's tough to get on projects. That's why lighting designers aren't on a lot of projects, because nobody wants to pay for it. But what we
Hmm.
found is that a number of our clients, particularly our residential clients, they don't necessarily know what they want or need, but they know what they've had and that it wasn't good for them. They
Hmm.
know what bad lighting is.
Hmm.
And what's unfortunate, which is always our battle, we get in early, we do a lighting design. What's the last thing that gets turned on, at the end of a project? I mean,
Sure.
you'll rough in your downlights, you'll rough in your coves, but you certainly don't put the fixtures in until the paint is done,
Hmm.
right? Until things are clean. And so the client, starts with you at the beginning, incurs costs, and it is not an easy process to do proper lighting design, and we can get into that in a minute. But they incur all this cost and they don't get to see the results until the very bitter end. When
Yes.
everyone has gone over budget, they're fed up. The project is probably late, as they most are, right?
Hmm.
And they just want to see the results. So it is tough. I mean, I've got some strategies that we use. I have a very short presentation that I can show prospective residential clients to show them what the difference is. And that's usually fairly successful. Lighting it's a visual business, right? It's very visual. An architect once said to me, "Oh, you're so visual." Yes, I am
Yes.
visual. This is what we do.
Hmm.
So,
Well, tell me,
yeah.
we're coming up on the final stages of the show here. Let us know what the design process is that you mentioned there in the last paragraph. What were you talking about when you go through your process? Share that with us.
Okay. Well, the first thing we do is try to get to know the clients and what's important to them. So, they homeschool their kids. The kids have a home office, so to speak, or have a spot where they need to be comfortable all day, or they're art collectors, or they entertain a lot, or the kitchen is the heart of their home and it's the most important thing. Or like with the OAA, we've had maintenance problems for the whole life cycle of the building because we couldn't access fixtures. So we try to dig deep and uncover that. And it's funny, the things that you will discover about your clients, they kind of reveal sometimes personal things to help explain to you. We had a client that was somewhat visually impaired, and so all of a sudden, contrast and shadow, not a great idea for her, right? If
Mm.
you're visually impaired, you need to be able to see everything. In her case, everything evenly.
Hmm.
So that's the first step, is understanding who you're lighting for. Then we take that information and we develop a concept of showing, we're going to light this wall, we're going to light that piece of art. You've got beautiful millwork, that's asymmetric. How can we show that off so that it's the
Mm.
focal point of the room? And we do that, to some degree in collaboration with the design team, because again, it shouldn't be about the lighting. It should be about creating a beautiful space. We like to say it's like the final finish of a project. So you get all your finishes right, but if you don't light it properly, you might not see it in the right color. You may not see it at all. So we develop this lighting concept, and then we review, and from there, once things are approved, the general direction, then you know pen to paper, as it were, to start developing the lighting layout, to start picking the technology that we're going to use to do it. And then it's sort of similar. You develop a lighting package for the contractors. We always say, who are we writing specs and doing drawings for? It's for the contractor. So we
Hmm.
detail everything: elevations, how high is that wall sconce, where in the millwork does the millwork lighting go, at the back, at the front, at the sides, right? So we try to detail all of that so that it goes fairly smoothly. Um, and we've actually been told by, we do work with certain distributors, particularly in the residential market, because the lighting we do is very different for contractors than what they're used to.
Hmm. Yeah. Especially if
I've
you're
I've had a
incorporating it into millwork. That's very
yeah,
precise, and you have to educate the contractor before they. It has to be very
yeah.
specific because you can really mess it up.
Actually, with millwork, we work directly with the millworkers,
Mm.
and typically on a project, we'll get them samples of the fixtures we want
Mm.
integrated in there. Most of them tend to use, unfortunately, little plastic puck lights and,
Sure.
you know, not very high-end tape light, and we prefer something, again, a little more sustainable with a little bit more longevity.
Hmm.
Anyhow, so, and once the drawing package is and specs are put together, then we support the project with, we can help with procurement. So we take our clients to the distributors that we know, that know our process, and they play a pretty important role, right?
Hmm.
Making sure stuff gets there on time, what comes first. Oh gee, didn't realize we need another connector from here to here. So they're complicated. And in fact, I'm talking about residential a lot because we're doing quite a lot of that now. But people think residential is so easy, right? Well, what do you do, right? Nothing to it. I can tell you that on a per square foot basis, the fees are higher for residential, because your powder room is different from your corridor, is
Hmm.
different from your bedroom, is right. It's not pick a fixture, multiply by 10,000.
Yeah, distributors
That's not the
avoid
way it is.
residential at almost all
No
costs.
residential here.
No residential. We do not.
Well, I'm
I don't
very,
want anything to do with residential. No, it's
well,
but
I'm
for
very
all the
grateful.
reason you stated and more. No, just because I
Yeah,
think the
no.
needs of a lighting designer are even higher in residential than they are in
Oh,
commercial spaces.
absolutely. And it's very personal,
Yes.
right? It's very personal. Like when so I talked about we don't like to use a lot of downlights. So on one residence we counted and there were 150 recessed downlights. 140 of them were wall washers.
Mm. Yeah, that seems
So
where
we
everyone's
light
going. Yeah, it seems to be.
as
We
they should keep
yes,
it
everyone's
going. Push those
yes.
wall washers.
Yes. I you
You
know
know,
what?
and then we
I'm
have
renovating a space above my garage and I talked to a lighting designer
Mhm.
because I'm not a lighting designer, okay?
Good.
And they said, where people are going is they're moving the recessed lighting towards the wall and they're washing the walls with light and then adding fixtures where you want more light. And I
Yeah.
and I really thought that was a wonderful sort of way to do it because you can walk into a space and just have the wall lighting on and the rest of the lighting on. It feels spectacular to be in that space. There's no glare. You can see where
Yeah.
you want to see where you're going. And yeah, I love this design
Yeah.
to wash the walls with
Yeah.
light. I think it's fantastic.
So,
Um,
like in the process, just to go back to be more specific. So
mhm,
the first thing we would consider is task, what's happening in the space. So we have to light the tasks.
mhm,
Then we consider perception of the space. Will there be enough vertical illumination to cover us? And then we look at if do we need any other fill light? And most often, if you're covering the task and you're covering your verticals and sometimes lighting the ceiling, if there's, you want to do that, you typically don't need to light every square inch of a space,
mhm.
right? When you're walking down the corridor, how much light do you need? You're not doing brain surgery there,
Sure. Yeah.
right? There's a reason why those light levels are prescribed as being lower. So, we talk about lighting with intention. Um,
Mhm.
that's our driver. We light with intention.
Deborah, we could probably talk. We've already gone 40 minutes, and we've
Oh
been
boy,
told
I
quite
can geek
clearly
out
that we're.
for hours with
I
you.
know, I know. We could keep going. Is there any final thoughts you have for the Get a Grip on Lighting listeners out there?
Well, lighting is one of these businesses that once you get into it, it's hard to get out. It kind of nips you in the soul, right? How many
Ah.
people say that they just can't leave it?
Yeah.
I think, I certainly think that the message should be that lighting designers should be an integral part of most design teams, because we will do it better. We will often do it less expensive because we use less product. And ultimately it will be more sustainable in the big picture, meaning of what sustainability is, cradle to cradle.
Mm.
So what seems like an initial added cost, in the long run, it is actually a huge cost savings.
Hmm. Deborah Gottesman, thank you for joining the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast. Go to etissl.com. I snuck it in there before you guys skip over it. Go to etissl.com. Great products, great company.
Yeah, we talked about downlights quite a bit here, and she said downlights. I don't think you say pot lights, Mike. I think you made that one up.
Maybe it's,
But
I don't think
No,
so.
it's
we do say
your name
pot
for it.
lights.
Yeah.
Fine.
We say
Spotlights,
pot lights,
whatever.
but we say down lights too, so I figured for the audience, everyone would understand that.
Yeah.
And they have
Do they
their
make wall
gimbals.
washers?
Oh yeah, you can point it where
Perfect.
you want it.
Good,
So that's what you get.
good,
Do it up.
good.
etissl.com. And of course, you got light bulbs in a warehouse. You sell them over the counter. You sell them over, or light fixtures. You sell them on Amazon. You sell them on eBay. You sell them on your website. You're selling them. This is your association, the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors. And I'm a Canadian, and I joined it. So it's kind of the Canadian and American. There's a couple Canucks in there. And we're having an event August 19th to 21st in St. Paul, Minnesota. The Nailed Convention, NailedCon. Check it out at naild.org, naild.org. Thank you for listening, watching, like, subscribe, do all those kind of things for us. Thank you. Appreciate it. Bye for now.